And what a beautiful quartet we have. It is Paul Krishnamurty, Neil Shanning, and William Kedjanyi, along with Johnny Ward here for the polling station. These are times of peril for Europe. Our man Putin is sounding suspiciously like a German geezer, an Austrian geezer, I think, from the 1930s and 40s. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Biden's exit date. I mean, what's going on with Biden? What's he going to do in relation to the Ukraine? BBC political editor betting this is one of William Kedjanyi's. It doesn't get more nerdy than this. I don't know anything about this, but the three lads do. We have the next Supreme Court justice. But thankfully, Paul has put us in the direction of this absolute beauty from Paul Wall to get us going. And we talk about the betting for the next Conservative leader and so forth. Paul Wall, and he started this tweet with a dot so that everyone can see it, including Rishi Sunak, who starts the tweet himself. Rishi Sunak just gone down a storm at a meeting of the Tory peers group in Lord Moses' room. Huge thunderclap rumble of table banging by his audience. Picture that. Laughter during Q&A too. Much warmer reception than at Boris Johnson got recently. So Boris Johnson included in the tweet. How do we start with this one, Paul?
Well, it's certainly a better news for him than we've had generally. We've seen two polls this week where he's now trailing Starmer for best PM. And his approval, I think, with YouGov has gone down to 30%, which is very low, and suggesting that the image that he built up with the furlough scheme, with it out to help out, is indeed hitting the rocks with economic events, so far as the public's concerned. So I think my initial take of that would have been, why would the Tories pick him if he's not a vote winner, particularly? Right? I don't see what he has. If he isn't more of a vote winner than, say, Penny Mordaunt, I'm not convinced he would be, then why would you pick him? But that sounds to me like that's very interesting. I mean, who are the Conservatives' peers? Are we talking about Lord Lebedev of Siberia and the Hamptons? Are we talking about Lord Ashcroft? Are we talking about Lord Edmiston, the payday lender? You know, what did Rishi tell them? Was it something to do with how sanctions won't bite on Russia, on the Russian oligarchs in London?
Sorry, Neil, just can you do that again, please?
I'm sure I'll get a chance to.
Is this what the world is reduced to, like him getting, like, you know, thunderclaps and so forth because he's just reassured them that the Russian oligarchs and the money will be okay in London, Neil?
I saw some Samantha Comres the other day, just comparing Rishi Sunak's net favourability. So May 2020, he was plus 29%. August 2020 plus 25, February 2021 plus 17, August 2021 plus 13, February 2022 just plus 3. So he's gone from 29% net to 3% net. But of course, what we need to remember, I'll take Paul's point that some of the people within the parliamentary party who are choosing which candidates they want to put through to the last two for the next Tory leader when that time comes, will be thinking solely about their current ratings and chances of winning a general election. But most of them, I think, will think, you know, which one suits my politics more, because they'll kind of say to themselves, well, it doesn't really matter what's happening exactly now. You know, like if you ask a member of the public about Rishi Sunak and how they think of him compared with how they thought of him a year ago, A, you're correct to say, I think they'll think less of him because they're not still on furlough anymore. But B, they'll definitely think less of him because the Tories are doing worse in the polls and because of the stuff that's happened with Boris Johnson and Partygate and whatever. And he has definitely become associated with that, and that's going to bring his ratings down. But if they make him the new leader, well, then he's got the chance to get away from all of that, and his favourability in the country is a lot tied to how the Tories are doing in their polling. And I think if you're a Tory MP and you feel like Rishi Sunak is the best option in terms of your personal politics, if you think of him, which I guess I think he is, a Thatcherite Tory, a deficit hawk, and that's the kind of Tory leader that you'd like, you're going to vote for him. You're not going to worry so much about his ratings in the 2024 election, because you're going to say to yourself, well, when he becomes leader, our party's ratings as a whole are going to go up, and so he's going to be better. You're also going to think to yourself that even though he's got quite high recognition in the country, there's still plenty of people in the country that don't follow politics that much. They won't know very much about Rishi Sunak. And if you're a fan of his personally, and you're a backbench Tory MP, you're going to think that the more the public see of him, the more they're going to like him, because that's generally how people are. They're optimistic about that. So I don't think, I wasn't thinking that that recent news for him was that bad, actually. Personally, in the betting, he has drifted quite a bit, hasn't he? There was a little funny thing that happened about maybe 3 weeks ago, where he went from 9-4 into 7-4 overnight, and there was no news whatsoever. Nothing really happened. It was just a money thing. Like the market just absorbed a lot of money. There were backers of him around, and it wasn't a news thing. He got to 7-4, and he's now drifted out to around about 11-4, and that's been a very gradual drift over the last 3 weeks. Just kind of going a tick a day out. I think he might have reached the high point of that. I can't really see him breaking through the 3-1 barrier. I think if I had to guess whether he gets the 3-1 next or 5-2 next, I'd definitely guess 5-2.
And just before we get to William, Paul, like, what is Britain's kind of role and what is its standing in the Ukraine crisis now? Because obviously we have the NATO situation, but Britain is Brexit has happened. Boris himself is obviously deeply, deeply undermined on a global level. What can Boris do? Rishi Sunak is 6-4 to be the next prime minister, mainly on the basis that Boris isn't going to last it out. Rishi takes over, or obviously gets there for the next election. He's 6-4. What can Boris do? He looked thoroughly dishevelled, I thought, in his press conference yesterday. What can he do in terms of the Ukraine crisis? Can he do anything? Is he even relevant in terms of this to win back some support at home?
Well, leaving the support at home question aside, because I'm not sure how much Ukraine affects anything on that regard, he's in a critically important position now, and Britain is in a critically important position, and I would have thought the microscope would be on us, because what you're seeing is, in pretty impressively quick time, an international coalition of democracies, of NATO members, has been, and would want to be NATO members, has been brought together to condemn Putin and stand against it. Now, Germany have just put Nord Stream 2 on hold. They've halted that. That is unpopular in Germany. That's an incredibly big move for their chancellor to take. I cannot believe in that situation where all of our allies in the West are taking measures, right, making tough decisions, that Britain can seriously get away with having our politics owned by Russian oligarchs, our city, our legal firms, 85,000 properties in Britain that no one can tell you who owns them.
85,000.
85,000 owned by shelf companies, and the government admit they can't tell you who owns them. Right? Yeah. We cannot carry on in that light and really remain a serious member of the Western democratic world. And I think that everything that's happened within the Tory party with Dominic Cummings and Boris, I think it's all connected. I think that Boris is actually has come round to the British state point of view, which is, we can't have this. America are our key allies. Now Trump isn't in, we have to be with America, and that means agreeing with the Biden agenda. It's
a murky word, William, and even the Irish press has kind of, been noting that there's a lot of Russian money in Dublin as well. We're not absolved from this whatsoever, but Boris is in, I don't think he's in an ethically compromised situation, but maybe politically, being Boris, he does see the kind of the conflict here.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be more focus over the coming weeks and months of the role of Russian money. And when I say Russian money, I mean specifically oligarch, Putin-linked money, dirty money in British politics. And that is going to be, I think, a fairly awkward dance for the Tories. It's proving to be already. And it's also going to put ministers again. And we saw this with Liz Truss this morning. We saw it with James Cleverly last night. it's going to put a lot of ministers in these uncomfortable on-air positions where they're tying themselves in knots trying to explain basically why they can't give back the cash that they've taken, but these people need to be sanctioned and we need to clean up our politics. But you know, it can still be one rule for us and a different rule for everybody else. In other words, a sort of different, if not as lethal form of PR backfiring as Partygate. And I think it'll be interesting to see just how much that area of things cuts through. Because
let me ask you a question, anybody really, because I kind of feel like Partygate, I don't personally think that the stuff that happened in Partygate was that interesting politically. You know, they broke the rules that they made, but I think that it's very easy to see why the public were angered by that, because you know, it's a pretty easy thing to explain. They had a party while other people couldn't go to funerals and couldn't shake the hands of their loved ones and whatever.
It's kind of last week's
that was
news,
pretty
though,
easy to explain. A lot of this dirty money stuff is quite a complex story to tell, and you know, it's easy. It's much easier in an interview to kind of brush over it because there's less, you know, there's less fingerprints on it, isn't there? Like, you know, I don't know. Do you think it's? I don't think it's going to have as much cut through with the public, just in terms of polling, as the Partygate would.
I would agree with that.
All these things are connected. So all these things are connected. You put the brand of a politician, the brand of a party, is the aggregate of all the things they do. And people,
yeah, sure.
You know, the dirty money thing has been going on for years, as we know, right? And no one's paying attention.
And no one's taken much notice of it.
But suddenly it's under.
You know, there was a politician before the last general election that tried to bring it up, and plenty of people in the Tory party.
And we could refight that election over and over and over again.
Well, my point is that, like, nobody cared. Like, so if nobody cared then,
they didn't notice it. It didn't get any coverage. It got
well, because, no, but also because the Tory, you know, people on listen, Paul. People on both sides of the house just kind of dismissed it as a load of nonsense, and they were able to get away with that with the public. The public, it didn't cost the Tories anything in their polling. So I'm asking, why should it cost them suddenly now if it didn't cost them then?
Because firstly, I am pretty certain that they did not notice that in amongst 100 issues doing the rounds in 2019, coming up to Christmas, an election going on, you've got Brexit on the ballot, Boris Johnson hiding in fridges. You know, most people aren't that engaged in politics. I talk to people all the time who aren't engaged in politics.
No, I agree with that. I mean, obviously.
They don't know it. They don't know any of it.
Obviously, I totally agree with all of that. But what I'm saying is, why would they notice now if they don't notice?
Because it's all over the news in a way that it never was.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Paul. Whether they actually care or not is another thing. Coming over to you, William, we'll move on to Joe Biden here in the sense of what he can do. He's had a very, very, you know, some people would say he's had a ropey tenure so far. This gives him a chance to kind of assert his kind of control at the top of the US. But what he does is questionable. It's a very, very difficult situation with Putin, who was obviously a buddy of Trump's, more or less. Just looking at the year he will cease to be US president, 3-1 this year, 8 next year, 8 2024. So he is age 15 to get to 2025 or later, William.
That 8-15 being part of the technical reason, which is that when you lose a US election as president, you don't cease to be president the next day. You go until the inauguration, the official transfer of power.
Will you get that far?
I should think he surely would. Even if I mean, okay, let's say Trump was to win in 2024. Who knows what they might do? But I think it's pretty likely he'll make it there. At the moment, my broad thoughts on Biden are ropey spot, but I don't see him suddenly leaving office for any reason. And I still think there's a reasonably high likeliness that he runs. There's certainly not a huge amount of potential Democratic alternatives who are suddenly pushing themselves forward, at least. Going on to what he can do with regards to the current crisis, it is a very difficult thing to do, to take on somebody who's being so aggressively imperialist, and with Putin the rule book changes because he doesn't respect them. But a lot of strong sanctions we've seen. I think the coalition building particularly is rather important. His relationship with Macron and also with Scholz is going to be crucial. As Paul noted earlier, a very quick set of international democracies have come together to condemn this. I think the big test, and I really don't want us to get here, but I fear that we will, is what happens when the physical stuff starts. And when I say the physical stuff, I mean the physical stuff from Putin's incursion into those regions, and if he goes further. I'm well aware of the fact that Ukraine has been at war pretty much since 2014 due to the annexation of Crimea. With regards just quickly to how it's been seen on the domestic stage, Biden's been very strong and very forthright in his condemnation, but as Paul will tell you plenty, the US isn't politically like it used to be. It's not the same sort of responsible reaction we'd have had even during the Obama years to this, even during Bush's second presidency. It's very different now. The polarization is massive. Yesterday, I thought his statement was reasonably strong, and plenty of lines from it made international news. But as he was walking away, Republicans were suddenly jumping on his body language in a very strange and odd way. There's a group of people, a large group of people, that don't believe he should be president. So how could he ever please them?
Yeah, like Paul, we live in extraordinary times because like the two great democracies in terms of Britain and the US are in such shit in so many ways. And there's two what might have been considered the great democracies. China is becoming the global power. Russia is basically he's basically playing the West here. What does Biden actually do?
I think he's done really as much as we could have expected. And I think what's actually going to happen now, it's not good news for anyone, but it might actually work for both Putin and Biden and various parties, is I think we're going to see a kind of Cold War standoff in that part of the world. I don't think that the West will intervene in Ukraine. Putin will slowly dismember it, right, and slowly bring it under Russian control, piece by piece, claiming everything is all a provocation every time, as he's done. But I think that Biden has critically reversed, reassured Europe after Trump had spent 4 years, undermining NATO, attacking Europe, and withdrawing troops from Europe, for example. So I think now you're going to see, for a long period, lots and lots of Western troops in that part of the region, defending the eastern flank of NATO, while Putin controls his little batch of mafia states that they control and destroys Ukraine.
Neil, just on Putin, I mean, there were strong echoes of Hitler pre the war in the stuff that he was basically saying about, traditional borders and all this crap. But is there any suggestion he just might be losing his mind? And will he eventually be kind of alienated within the Russian system, where you see he has like a meeting with his defense minister, who's the other end of this massive Kremlin table? It's like they're supposed to be allies here. So is there any sense that Putin might, because dictators eventually lose their mind? I
mean, I don't know. There's not much doubt, is there, that he's a dangerous psychopath and always has been. But
we should get him on the show.
Obviously, I'm less concerned about the chances of a third world war and more concerned about minor movements on the betting exchanges with all of these elections. What I've noticed is that everyone seems to be having a good war. The second he invaded, but just on the Boris Johnson market, the one I've been looking at quite a lot is the year of departure. I don't know, you guys getting me on every week has made me stare at that much more than I used to. I think I've mentioned before that the shortest price 2022 got to was 1.27. It was 1.8 when no troops had moved into the 2 bits of Ukraine. It got to evens pretty much the second those troops went in there. So that was considered to be a good thing for Boris Johnson. Now, presumably the market feels like it's a nice distraction from Partygate. A lot of people talk about Margaret Thatcher and the Falklands War. People often talk about Michael Foot and the Labour manifesto from that time being the reason that Margaret Thatcher won the election. But of course, actually, if you look at it, Michael Foot was ahead in the polls prior to the Falklands War, and Margaret Thatcher turned it all around. I think we can assume that so far the situation in Ukraine over just the last week has been good for Biden. You know, Biden's position has strengthened from where it was 2 weeks ago. Although I agree, it's very polarized over there, and obviously Trump's come out and basically, you know, he's basically thrown his hat in with Putin. And then in France, Macron has been able to be, you know, seen as a very important part of the whole thing and a big diplomat, and he's kind of won the opportunity to be the kind of most important politician within the EU, which when Merkel was around, you know, he didn't always hold that crown, but I think he's kind of wrested it back again now. And it's made him shorten up in the presidential election. Given that all of these politicians are supported financially by major international arms traders, arms manufacturers, I think basically everybody's happy as long as nobody presses the nuclear button. They're all spending more and more money on military. They're getting the population terrified into thinking that rather than recovering from COVID, they should be they should be happy that their tax money's going into extra military spending. You know, if you're one of these megalomaniac lunatics that runs any of these countries, you're probably pretty happy with how it's going.
Although, to be fair, I think the cost of living crisis that's hitting Europe is going to make a lot of people very, very unhappy as well. But we'll see about that. We should go to the main reason we're here, which is the BBC political editor betting.
Oh God, really?
I know. It's literally on the list here. We've got to go through it. I don't know. I'm going to zone out for the next 2 minutes, but go ahead anyway, William. What do we got here?
Okay, just quickly, actually. Redfield and Wilson did release a poll on which current events have mattered a significant amount to Britons, and it's rising prices at 61%, national insurance increase at 43%, then Downing Street parties at 40%. So still very much top of that agenda.
When was that, Will? When did that come out? I didn't see that.
16th February, the fieldwork.
Okay. So it wasn't. So Ukraine wasn't such a big story at the time.
Not such a big story. No, it'd be much different now. I would wager. Just regarding the BBC political editor market, we've gone back up with it again. The reason being that Jon Sopel and Emily Maitlis have moved to global radio, following in a trend of big names at the BBC who have gone out of the corporation for varying different reasons. There is a lot of cost cutting at the BBC. The license fee is being frozen. That means that the BBC is losing money year on year due to inflation. And some presenters just want to go and not be bound by the charter, especially with regards to onerous social media rules. And some also want to make more money.
I mean, because Emily Maitlis was famous for being very cautious on social media. She literally called for a coup to depose the leader of the opposition in the 6 weeks prior to the last general election.
You know, I love having Neil Channing on the show. It is that.
How can we afford these guys? I have no idea.
No.
I thought it was a 1 week special, and they've been here for about 2 months now.
The thing I love about having Neil on the show is that would have been a million for me. If you ask somebody in the street about Emily Maitlis, or even somebody who watched last night about an Emily Maitlis controversy, that'd be a million to be the one that we picked out. But long story short, a lot of senior people at the BBC are tired of very onerous impartiality rules. They're tired of having to walk the tightrope for things that they don't think really constitute being biased. And of course, you know, the balance requirement it is very literal there. And repeating things or quoting things that could really be seen to be true or non-controversial or majority public opinion can still get you in hot water, as happened with Maitlis on a number of different counts over the last 2 years. And then, of course, there's the money issue, just in the sense that if you lead the BBC, you can command a higher fee. You can also do much more private engagement stuff. Anyway, going back to the matter at hand, Maitlis and Sopel have left. They've gone to global. They're doing their own podcast. They're with Dino Sophos, audio whiz, who also used to be the BBC. And this is blown the race to BBC political editor wide open. Laura Kuenssberg departing, of course. Mate list was short, but not such a big runner. Sopel, however, was very much hotly tipped, was seen as a major contender, having left the North America job, was seen as one of the few people, I think, with the seniority to demand being in the conversation. Now he's gone, we've rejigged the market. We're now 9-4 Alex Forsyth. She's a political correspondent. 4's Faisal Islam, economics editor. 5's Lewis Goodall, Newsnight policy editor. 30-2 Adam Fleming. He is the presenter of Newscast. Amal Rajan is 8. Nick Watt is 10. And Sam Coates has been cut in this rejigged market. He's 12. And I think the race is pretty open because they've had a lot of issues recruiting for the job. Vicky Young's meant to be a huge runner. Personal reasons meant she's not applying, she's staying in the current role. Chris Mason wants to continue his current projects. That's 2 of the big contenders out. And Alex Forsyth has shortened up a lot, but there is an openness to it. And I think...
Can I ask you, because you're really following this much more than me, when are we likely to find out? It seems like almost a year ago, isn't it, since Kuenssberg announced she was going. B, is there a chance they just don't bother getting one at all? And C, could number 10 just kind of do their own Twitter feed instead of leaking it to somebody from the BBC?
For A, sometime...
Save us all a load of money.
A, sometime probably in the spring, summerish, I don't know, about around April time. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they'd want to get it done before the summer. I think Kuenssberg, off the top of my head, she leaves in April. And the application is closed on the 10th. So not a million years away. B, in terms of the chances that they don't have one, no, slim to none. The corporation will want to move on. They'll want to have a figurehead for their political coverage, and they've been desperate to try and recruit somebody. I can't see that they just chuck the political editor job.
Did you guys notice Will knows the exact date when the application's closed? Did you want to put us 3 down as your referees, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Let's do it. And last but never least, just on that access thing, number 10 have had a lot of communication problems. I think it's fair to say, but the issue is you can have all the access you want. You can have the media sort of on your side, and you can have the structure in your favour as much as you like. But there are just some things that people will know is absolute BS. And we've seen a lot of that recently. You can have all the stenographers you want. You're not really going to get away, are you, with things such as the most onerous breaches of like Partygate. It just depends on the situation. I imagine that not much is going to change structurally with regards to relationships. And this is for all major media organisations and the lobby as a general whole. But I do think this position is going to be important. I do think it's going to have some sort of an impact, if only because Kuenssberg is an incredibly well-known journalist. Her profile has risen massily.
We need to get her on the show.
We definitely.
Party, is there not a Twitter party when she goes?
There definitely will be a Twitter party when she.
Suitcases of wine at the ready.
If Amal Rajan wins, I'll buy. I'm buying.
There we go. We need to do a space of some sort if she does, or this virtual YouTube hangout. There was a party the day she announced she was leaving.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that just might be enough on that issue, but we will get to a very important issue, the next Supreme Court of Justice. And what's certain here is going to be a black woman, pretty much, William Kedjanyi, which is interesting.
Yeah, very much so. This goes in line with the Biden administration's general ethos and general thinking.
2 to 7 and 3. You're actually covered the book. You're under. Actually, the 2 of them wouldn't even make you money.
Yeah. Ketanji Brown Jackson is the overwhelming favourite. Sort of a quick go over of her profile. She's serving as a circuit judge on the United States Court of Appeal for the District of Columbia Circuit. Long story short, to decomplicate that, senior judge, very influential. 3 current justices have previously served on that court, and she's got all the considerations. And of course, she's clerked for 3 federal judges as well. So, you know, I think it's fair to say she is the big favourite. That said, I wouldn't completely rule out Leona Kruger, on the California Supreme Court for 8 years, worked at Obama's Department of Justice, argued 12 cases before the Supreme Court as deputy to the Solicitor General, and also clerked for John Paul Stevens, who was on the court. I think those 2, admittedly, you know, the market is cornered there. I think those 2 really are standouts, and I would imagine it will be Ketanji Brown Jackson. I think, as you pointed, it is very noticeable that the 3 biggest runners, Brown Jackson, Kruger, Childs, all Black women. And if I should say, actually, looking at the odds now, yeah, I imagine Jackson would win it. I think Kruger is a bit big at 13-2 for her resume. I'm a bit surprised that somebody with the experience in the role.
You just put up the 2-7, 4-1, and 13-2 chance.
I haven't put up any of them. I've just given you everyone.
I think one of a 2-7, 3-1, and 13-2 shot will win this race.
No, I got what Will was saying. Michelle Childs is the poor value, second favourite, because I think she's only second favourite because Jim Clyburn has said he wants her, and there's this assumption that just because Jim Clyburn endorsed Biden in South Carolina, therefore everything Jim Clyburn says Biden will do.
Yeah.
I think the money is probably right. I don't think these things are particularly unpredictable, but I think Kruger, you're right, it would be the value. One interesting thing, though, I'm just keeping an eye that, because this is fairly imminent, it's going to be decided within the next few days. Is there going to be some crazy fake gamble on Predictit that spooks everyone at the last minute and makes the market flip? Because they did that on the Democrat nomination. Like, by all accounts, Harris always had it in the bag, and it went crazy. And Susan Rice went like 3-1 on about an hour before Harris got it.
Okay, before we finish up today, I'm going to give everyone the chance just to talk one point each about the Rush situation, how worried he is about that. I'll start with you, Neil, actually. What really alarms me is I think, you know, the fact that you've turned a war into like, how is it going in the market? It's doing well for me is very, very honest of you. I think it's apoplectic that we're in probably a climate apocalypse here, and we have like Putin worrying about invading Russia or invading Ukraine when there are so many things to be worried about for the greater good of mankind. I'm slightly worried about where the world is going in the next 50 years. How worried should we be about Russia?
I'm much more worried about the climate, yeah. And I'm always more worried about the climate than virtually every other issue that we ever talk about. Those people that came out and said that Brexit was a bigger deal than climate change just need locking up, really.
There were 40 million.
I mean, I don't know. I saw some discourse on Twitter today about, you know, what would we do if Putin was invading East Anglia? I mean, it's just a bit mad, really. I mean, I think what he's done so far is fairly predictable, and most people predicted it. Most people have predicted that there won't be a full invasion of Ukraine for a whole bunch of reasons. And I don't see any reason to go against that. It's not great. Obviously, I'm not a fan of Putin. I think, he runs a gangster country. It's it's hideous, but literally the West did put him there. And now, he's come and put them on the bum.
How did the West put a KGB officer in charge?
Well, they could have just not interfered in the election that Yeltsin would have won. But
Yeltsin did a deal to stop himself going to prison to make Putin prime minister. Putin was made prime minister on a deal.
I think you can see quite. Putin was Tony Blair's man. I mean, he was a big supporter. Absolutely.
Okay. How was he?
Peter Mandelson, massive fan. These people got him there. Anyway, we're left with this situation, and you know, I personally, I don't get too worried about it. I can't see there being, you know, I'm not worried about World War III. It's not. I don't feel anything like as terrified about that prospect as I might have been kind of 30 years ago.
Paul, I mentioned Hitler a couple of times in the show today. And Hitler, there were a couple of attempts in his life from within the Nazi Party, which both failed. Just say Putin was taken out by a Russian in the morning. What happened to Russia then? Is there any chance of democracy in the next few years?
I don't think so. As I understand it, we would probably get an equally, if not worse, member of that KGB mafia gang, probably Patrushev maybe. I personally think we've got to do, it's much bigger than just war in Ukraine or territorial stuff. This is a transnational crime syndicate, right, operating out of our tax havens in secret with impunity, wrecking our politics, dividing our society, you know, doing all manner of financial scams that are way beyond my pay grade to explain.
Influencing US elections.
Influencing US elections, influencing European elections. I mean, you know, look at them. They're all the shills all over the world, all the Russian, all the people I've been saying for the last 5 years are just mouthpieces for the Kremlin. They're all doing it one by one. Aaron Banks, now Nigel Farage, all of Trump supporters, Candace Owens, etc., Tucker Carlson. And it will be the same, I'm quite sure, in Europe. If you go and find the alt-right and the alt-left in all these countries, you'll find a load of grifters just doing everything they can to change the subject away from what the fact that Putin is Hitler style, as you say, just expanding and invading countries, taking away their sovereignty.
The only saving grace about all this is, William, we can just turn our eyes away and look forward to the Saudi Cup on Saturday.
That really sounds.
I mean, we've gone from countries taking away other countries' democracy to mentioning the Saudis in the same breath. Now, I mean, nobody ever talks about Yemen.
William, last word.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I would agree with Neil that I think the issue of our time is climate change. I think that is definitely a thing to worry about. And, you know, as I say this, Shrewsbury, where I was only a few months ago, has been completely flooded for the third time in 3 years. The extent of the flooding, by the way, there in the north, in the northeast and parts of the northwest, I think it is really quite remarkable that the images are stunning and very scary, because there is not very much you can do by flood defences to change that amount of time. Regarding Russia, I mean, I think it's very reasonable to be scared by Putin, to be scared by what might happen. Who knows really, because people I really trust and rate have given me two different scenarios. One of a full-scale invasion also of Ukraine, and the other of Putin basically taking these areas, saying they're mine now, annexing them, and then not doing very much at all. There's a wide estimate of what might happen, and I think you can respect analysts on both sides of it. It's clearly a threat, whether it's immediate and to be felt here. You know, I don't think we're going to get to the East Anglia. I don't think we're going to have to think about an East Anglia defence force anytime soon, let's say.
Ipswich, they were saying he was going to invade Ipswich this morning.
Yeah.
And apparently the left were supporting it for some reason. It's always the left's fault.
I should just add, I really want to make this point publicly. It really is just best to disregard the opinion of people who engage in cosplay about what might happen if Corbyn was Prime Minister or whatever, and all that. So I don't think we're seeing many serious analysts focusing on that. But in general, I would agree with Neil in the sense that I'd be more scared about climate change or whatever, but it doesn't mean that it's not terrifying, because again, who really knows what will happen and who really knows how Putin is thinking? When he gave that address to the nation, he didn't seem like a guy who was in control to me. He didn't seem stable to me. That's the sort of thing that really terrifies me.
I think in general we can agree that we're royally screwed one way or the other with life at the moment. And we hope you really enjoyed the show. That was Neil and Paul and William. Well, short of us being new, we will be back next week.
Let's make it to Cheltenham, guys. Let's make it to the festival.
All the best.